Hello friends, today I'm going to show you how to construct a walking bass line on uke in 5 easy steps. Now you might be asking yourself why you should bother learning to play a bass part on uke when you're not a bass instrument. But the reality is, in the jazz idiom, that the walking bass line is the bridge between rhythm and harmony and gives you a perspective on the chords that you would not have by simply strumming them. It's also a great way to think about soloing because ultimately it comes down to understanding the chords and the arpeggios and scales contained therein. So these concepts can also be used for single note soloing. But let's start at the very beginning. For this exercise, we're going to use the A section of On the Sunny Side of the Street. And if you're not familiar with the tune, I'll drop a link to my play-along version of this to familiarize yourself with the chord changes. We're going to start out with the first part of this bass line, just playing the root or the name of the chord. And we're going to do this in what's called a 2-beat feel, or 2 half notes per measure. So we're starting out on a C major chord, and we're going to play just a C. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it goes up to our open E string, then F, first fret, and we have 2 in this measure. We go G to G sharp, and then A minor 7th, just our open A, down to D on the 2nd fret of our C string. We stay on D, and then up to G, C, G. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to play this together, and I'm going to sing the melody of the tune so you can hear how this fits together. It sounds like this. 1, 2, 3. Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries on that doorstep. Just direct your feet to that sunny side of the street. This is an important first step when you're walking through a bass line on a tune, is just to understand the root movement of the chords, what the lowest note in that chord should be. And then we move on to the next bit, adding the 5th. We're going to stick with our 2-beat feel, or 2 notes per measure. But instead of playing the root on both notes, we're going to play the root and 5th of the chord. And what does that mean? If we're thinking about C major, which we have in the beginning, what is 5 notes above C? C, D, E, F, G. So we're going to play C and G. And then E. The root's always going to stay on beat 1 for us. Our 5th over an E7th will be B. And then down to our F. Back to C. That's our 5th. And then this next measure, we have G7 to G sharp diminished 7th. We're just going to play the roots because we don't have time to play those 5ths in there. Let's listen to that first line here, with the 5th in here now. We go to our next bit, we go to the A, our 5th is E, D on the 2nd fret, A, back to our D, G. So if we have 2 notes in each measure, or 2 plucks of the string, we're going to play root and a 5th. If we have 1, we're going to play just the root of the chord. So let's try this together, and I'll sing the melody so we can hear how this is starting to support the melody now. 1, 2, 3. Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries on that doorstep. Just direct your feet to that sunny side of the street. Good. Now when you think about a walking bass line, you probably think about 4 notes to the bar. So let's start adding that in now. Now we're going to add in more chord tones. When we're constructing a bass line, we're outlining the harmony of the song, the notes in the chord. That is the most important aspect. So we're going to keep our root on beat 1, and on beat 3, we're still going to have the 5th of the chord. We're just going to fill in the blanks in the middle there and play quarter notes, or 4 beats per measure. Now, so we're going to be starting our C chord, and it's a C6th chord, which contains C, E, G, and A. So we're going to go, just play up the notes of our strings. can also play the G on the 3rd fret. And then we're going to our E7th chord. We're gonna have a G sharp on the 4th fret of our E string. And then we'll play the D, the 7th, all the way down to the 4th fret. Let's listen to those first 2 measures. So we're hearing the harmony, which is... Then we get to our F chord. We go F, A, C, and there's only 3 notes in this chord because it's a major chord. So we'll go right back to our 3rd, right back to A. And then for our G7th to G sharp diminished 7th, remember that we didn't have room for that 5th in there, so we're just gonna play the root and 3rd of each of these chords. G, B, G sharp, and note that that B is exactly the same. So let's listen to that first line with the chord tones in here. It sounds like this. So now we're starting to hear the qualities of the chords. Are they major? Are they minor? Are they dominant? 7th chords, and not just the root and 5th, not just the basic harmony. So let's continue on. So we get to our A minor 7th chord. It's going to sound like this. We have A, C, E, G, and then our D7th chord. Note that's really just going up this D7th chord that we're used to playing. Then D minor 7th, play this D up on the 5th fret. F is our 3rd. We already did a G7. So let's listen to that 2nd line. Just listen for those chords. You can play along the chords over top while I'm playing this. 2, 3, 4. Let's see if we can't put our melody over top of this with this. 1, 2, 3. Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries on that doorstep. Just direct your feet to that sunny side of the street. So now we have our arpeggios. We have the most important notes of the chord. So now it's time to start making the line move a little bit. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to change what's happening on beat 4 of every measure and making sure that it is leading us to the next note. You notice when we do our arpeggios, it kind of just sounds like we're running the notes in the chord. We need to use approach tones to get closer to the root of the next chord. And what does that mean? We're either going to be 1 or 2 frets away from the note that we are targeting. That's all. That's the general rule. If you can be a half step away, 1 fret away from the note you're targeting, that's wonderful. And we can use pretty much any note to do this. If it's a chord tone, even better, but it doesn't have to be. So if we look at this first measure, we're just changing the last note in this. From an A, we had that, right? But we need to target the E, that's our open string. So what if we just choose F? Where can you go except that E right there? It wants to resolve right there. And then on the E7th, we're targeting this F right here. So what about our open E string, which is the root of our chord? It's a strong tone. Listen to those first 2 measures. F measure and the G7, G sharp, diminished 7th measure, we can leave exactly the same. They're already targeting what we need them to target, right? When we walk down to this A, it's a whole step away from a G. It's 2 frets away from a G. And then A minor 7th. All is good until we get to that last one. We don't want to go up to a G, because what are we targeting? Our next measure. D7th chord, right? So we're going to use an E flat here. Non-chord tone. It's in fact a flat 5. But that's okay, because what we're worried about on beat 4 is getting ourselves to the next chord. Could just walk right up that arpeggio. Everything stays the same. So you can see that just using our chord tones already generally starts to build in this approaching system, these approach tones of getting a half or whole step away from the note that we're targeting. So let's try this with the melody, and let's play this and see how it sounds and how it leads our ear to the next chord a bit more efficiently than just using chord tones. 1, 2, 3. Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries on that doorstep. Just direct your feet to that sunny side of the street. We're getting there. It still sounds a little square to me. If you're enjoying this song and this lesson, I'm teaching this all month over on the Tin Man's Magic Ukulele Club. We have well over an hour of instructional videos and PDFs on learning this song, how to play the chords, how to use chord substitutions, how to play the melody, and how to solo over top of this form. We're addressing one song per month on the Magic Ukulele Club, so please do check it out and join us over there. Now, it's just fine to play all chord tones and an approach tone like we were doing. Adding in some extra passing tones can really help spice things up so we don't feel like we're just running arpeggios the whole time. And this is where beat 2 comes in, and where we can start to target other tones in the chord. Maybe we're not going to play the root on the downbeat of every single measure, although you can, and it's absolutely fine. It's the strongest option. So we're going to start out exactly the same. This is good. It targets, it gives our whole chord. But then when we get to this E7th chord, I'm going to, instead of targeting the F in that F major chord, I'm going to target the A, which is the third. So listen to how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go E, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and then I'm going to use chord tones to outline the chord. If I'm not hitting the root on beat 1, I really want to make sure that I'm strongly outlining the chord in the rest of the measure using chord tones. And I'm going to G, so I'm going to play an F sharp here. So we go A, C, F, F sharp. Let's listen to this first line, right? So in that G7, the G sharp diminished. Again, I'm playing the 5th of the chord, the D over the G sharp diminished 7th, and then coming down. Let's listen to that first little bit and how we're creating more tension and more motion in the line. And this is what makes it sound like a walking bass line. We get to our A minor 7th chord, and we already have that flat 5 in there. It sounds good. Now, instead of just walking up, our D7th chord sounds a little bit square. So let's use some passing tones in here. So we're D, E, F sharp, G, and what is that? I'm just stealing some notes from a scale in here, adding in a chord tone. And again, the D minor 7th, I'm hitting that A, which is the 5th of the chord. And then I'm not going to resolve at the end. Instead of going to C6, I'm actually going to outline a 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. E minor 7th, A minor 7th, D minor 7th, G 7th. And really, we're not fully playing these chords, but as a bass player, and if you're walking bass lines, you have the opportunity to change the harmony of the song by insinuating different chords, even if the rest of the band isn't playing them. And that's really the fun of playing bass lines. And this is something that you can incorporate into your solo playing as well. So let's try this final line with passing tones in here and the melody over top. 1, 2, 3. Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries on that doorstep. Just direct your feet to that sunny side of the street. This is just a crash course into how to construct bass lines. Obviously, it's an art form that takes a very long time to really wrap your head around. It takes quite a bit of knowledge of the harmony or the chords of the song, or at least really using your ears to know what works. And that's what it comes down to. Once you get past the root and the 5th and arpeggiating the chords, then it is just playing what you think sounds good and what leads the listener best to the next chord tones. I'll see y'all next week. After the rain comes the